All right, well, I will go ahead and get us started. Um, Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for being here and welcome. This is the very first webinar of SCBNA's new Community Access, Reach, and Engagement Committee. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anna Weber. I'm the chair of the committee and also the diversity officer for the Society for Conservation Biology North America. Today, we're very excited to be hosting a webinar with Reimagining Conservation on the future role of the U.S. in global conservation. But before we get into that, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what our organization is all about for anyone who may be unfamiliar. My slide does not want to advance. One second. By the Society for Conservation Biology North America, which is a regional group of the broader Global Society for Conservation Biology. We're a professional society dedicated to advancing the science and practice of conserving biological diversity. We envision a world with thriving biodiversity, ecosystems, and human connections. And our mission is to provide an environment that welcomes, supports, and empowers diverse students and professionals to contribute, advance, and apply conservation science. So to summarize all that, we're a really broad organization with members of all backgrounds and all career paths within the conservation field. That includes biologists, social scientists, conservation managers, government agency employees, really anything that is connected to conservation. For our members, we host networking and professional development events, and we hold conferences in North America every 2 years, with the next one being just this summer in Milwaukee. And the global level of society also produces 3 publications that members are able to subscribe to keep up to date on research and conservation news. So speaking of that conference, it is coming up pretty quickly here now in mid-July. It's a collaborative effort between SCBNA and the Society for Ecological Restoration, and it's going to be pretty amazing. You can find full details about the conference or just other information about Society for Conservation Biology North America on our website through this QR code, and the link to this will also be dropped in the chat. So this webinar series has been organized, as I mentioned earlier, by the Community Access, Reach, and Engagement Committee, or the CARE Committee. We work to build a safe and supportive community within SCBNA, in which all are welcome to come together towards a common goal of supporting conservation efforts in North America. So we're really focused on member engagement and community building and improving accessibility and inclusivity within our organization and then also within the broader field of conservation. So we host webinars like this one, and we develop online resources to support our members. Some folks who are on this committee have also been part of developing an allyship program, which includes a series of educational videos as well as a classroom curriculum that will be publicly available for use. We have a committee that is little but mighty. If you'd like to be involved, feel free to send me an email there below, and I can circle you into our communications. So now I will just briefly plug a couple of the projects we've been working on before I introduce our speakers. Over the last year or two, we've been crowdsourcing a compilation of resources related to diversity issues and legal resources. It includes a lot of articles and websites where you can go to learn about diversity issues, how to navigate federal policies, for instance, in scientific grant writing, where there's now some limitations on the type of language that can be used. We have job boards and resources for job seekers, guidance for how to communicate with the public and the media, how to contact your congresspeople, et cetera. And there's also a few legal resources there related to immigration issues, as well as environmental and conservation policy. So this list of resources is under constant development. If you go on there and you see that there's something that we're missing, there's a link on the right-hand side of the website that you can use to add additional resources to the list. We've also been working to crowdsource a list of opportunities for students that are not dependent on US federal funding, given the uncertainties around that type of support right now in science and academia in general. We're looking for opportunities including scholarships, assistantships, fellowships for graduate students and postdocs, research opportunities for undergrads, internships, and grant opportunities. Anybody can add an opportunity to this list using that upper QR code, which goes to a Google form. And then the current list is available to view in the lower QR code. This list is definitely in need of updating. So if you know of an opportunity that might fit the bill, please feel free to go ahead and add it to our list. The more people who are able to contribute to this, the more helpful it will be. So at this point, I am very excited to turn this over to our two speakers today. We have Ash Baker and Robin Martino. They both work with the organization Foundations of Success on their new initiative, Reimagining Conservation, whose mission is to build a bipartisan playbook that reimagines how the U.S. government contributes to global conservation, strengthening international stability and security while honoring nature as a core American value. I'm very excited to hear from both of them today, and I will let them introduce themselves and tell us more about the organization.
Great. Okay, I'm going to pivot to sharing my screen. Hi, everybody. I am Ash Baker, and I'll talk a little bit more about us and our team here in just a second here. Okay, and we're going to be inviting you to come into this slide deck in a little bit. We are hoping for a little bit of interaction, so you'll have access to these slides soon if I'm moving through them too quickly. Welcome you because we are going to be going into breakout groups later. If you want to include your name and your organization role, if you're comfortable, and where you're based in the chat, just so folks get a chance to know each other before we head into those breakout groups. Totally optional. And note that you can always check out our website, which we just recently launched here, reimaginingconservation.com. Okay, so we've done a little bit of framing and welcome. I'm going to give you, myself and Robin are going to give you an overview of Reimagining Conservation. And then we're going to have some time to have an exercise and breakout groups and a discussion more broadly about how we can continue to engage as a coalition and hopefully include some of you in those discussions. So who we are as an initiative, we are an initiative, we are not an organization. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but our goal as Reimagining Conservation is to facilitate the right amount of information exchange so that we can transform global challenges around conservation into practical bipartisan solutions. So we are looking to make this a bipartisan effort so that we can have a new, better future for what US leadership in conservation looks like. And oh, there we go. So we have a couple of different levels of engagement here. We have a core team, which I'll introduce you to in a moment, who is focused on planning and doing and fostering a broader coalition. And then we have the coalition itself, which is co-developing this playbook with the facilitation of the core team, broadening our network, sharing the word, spreading the word, and being deeply engaged in discussions. So on the core team side, you have myself. I work at Foundations of Success. I've just been supporting US government funded projects and contracts over the years as a US government implementing partner. So that might be with US Forest Service, might be with USAID, a lot of different US entities. And Robin Martino, who's on the call, who's been working for more than 2 decades alongside USAID implementing biodiversity programming. She, though works very closely with FOS, is an independent consultant. And then we have former leadership from USAID. So we have Cynthia Gill on our team, who was the director for the Center of the Natural Environment at USAID, and Hadass Kushnir, who was a Natural Climate Solutions Division Chief. We also have my colleague and director of Foundations of Success on the team. I think he's on the call, as is Sean Peabody, who is also an implementing partner of USG work with environmental incentives. Ed Carr is on our team from the Stockholm Environment Institute as the US director there. So we're just kind of bringing people together and facilitating the discussion, but where the really exciting stuff happens is actually with the coalition itself. We're just kind of helping these great minds think and work together. The coalition is made up of policy experts, national security professionals, lots of folks in the private sector, and we have both advocates for previous systems and critics of previous systems and folks who are looking forward to something new. We're working both with local practitioners all the way up to folks who have a great understanding of the global practice of conservation. And we are hoping to have more of you involved in that if you're not already aware of this coalition and engaged with it. Okay, so slowly getting us to who we are. The purpose of what we're doing is, as I mentioned on the Who We Are slide, the first one, to prepare the community to actually meet the moment when we can rebuild the US role in global conservation, recognizing that a lot has shifted over the past year. And we really want to be ready with practical plays or scenarios that we think could, or solutions that we think could work under certain scenarios. And we want those to be evidence-based, and we want it to be developed with multiple experiences and understandings of the world. So that's we're working towards that now because we have a moment to do it. And that is leading toward a longer term vision of a renewed US role that leads towards sustainable conservation worldwide, that's effective and that's just. So I'm going to just briefly touch that there are some guiding principles that we're working towards this common ground stewardship, making sure that this is a bipartisan effort, appreciating that it is an American core value. Purposeful innovation, so not just repeating what we did in the past, but thinking about something new, how to do this global conservation differently, including those broad perspectives that maybe we don't all typically engage with along the different sides of the political spectrum. And then an intergenerational commitment, appreciating that this is in service of future generations. So quickly, a timeline for folks who are interested of how this all started. We formed a core team in the spring as some of those US institutions shifted what they were funding and away from conservation, international conservation at least. So we started out in the spring of last year. We had our first convening in the summer and we became official with a name and everything. We started having core meetings, drafting what this playbook would look like, this core product that Robin's going to tell us a little bit more in a moment. And we started communicating a little bit about what we were doing so that we could grow the coalition, put on more convenings. We had online events, we had in-person working groups, including one at Climate Week in New York in the fall. And then we've just since then really continued that coalition building and learning activities that we think would be important to engage broader audiences. So looking forward, we're hoping to keep growing that coalition and start working on that playbook. But I'm going to pause on giving more information there so that Robin can tell us more. I'm just going to sit for a moment and let these kind of headlines come up. So I think it's been about a year since a lot of these shifts happened, and we're really starting to understand how, USDA, USGS, even NIH funding for science has impacted the on-the-ground work. And it's not just that we have a lot of representation from USAID in our core team. We're really talking about all of these different institutions that have funded conservationists and scientists over the years. And it's really hit hard. So it's not always known how far that funding goes. The NOAA funding for conserving oceans and coral. There was funding with U.S. Forest Service that was combating wildlife trafficking abroad. So there are a lot of activities that were funded or related to conservation under these different agencies. And you can kind of just get an understanding, if you're not already familiar, with the types of work that was, community-based conservation work that was locally led, protected area work, supporting rangers with their patrols and protected areas in Vietnam, research, which I'm sure a lot of folks on this call can resonate with, health research, One Health research with zoonotic diseases, for example, regional programming. USG institutions were really good at connecting and bridging regional programs from maybe from one part of a region to another part on a continent, but even globally as well. They were really well suited to do that. And some of the outcomes we lost here, better biodiversity outcomes, climate resilience, improved livelihoods, our global health, greater good, and of course the diplomacy that came with the US supporting that. So this is kind of where we started and why we started it. I'm just going to pass it over to Robin to tell us a little bit more about what we're going to do with it now.
A mute button. Great. Thanks, Ash. And thank you, SCB North America, for hosting us. This is a great chance to talk about some exciting stuff, especially, very exciting for me too, with the loss of feeling like most of my life of profession with attachments to USAID. So we're seizing this moment, and we're seizing this moment to capitalize on the opportunity to rethink the U.S. government's role in international conservation, and jumping in to create a new future, and acting as a driver for change. And part of this is building the coalition, and we hope that we can count on you to help champion a new future, for the role of the U.S. in conservation. Next slide, Ash. So how exactly are we seizing this moment? The Reimagine Global Conservation Coalition is building a bipartisan coalition, or Reimagine Global Conservation is building a bipartisan coalition. And this means building strong, broad, diverse coalition that'll bring new voices, new leadership, and new inspiration. And to learn from others who have successfully built broad, diverse coalitions, our team convened a group of cross-sectoral leaders on February 4th to share practical wisdom, on building broad-based cross-party coalitions that generate influence and sustain impact. And that was really a learning experience for us and members of the coalition already. And we're finishing up a blog on that event, which will be shared via LinkedIn and the website. And I think that stuff's going to be linked. Yeah, we'll share that out all in the chat too. And this learning event was just one step in our effort to, next slide, Ash, to develop the core product of this coalition and or this group. And that's a playbook for the future of U.S. government involvement in global conservation. To develop a practical playbook of functions, structures, decision points, and governance options for the U.S. government to engage in international conservation. I think the next slide, Ash, yeah. Right. So the playbook is, yeah, it's really this opportunity to flexibly and adaptively meet the moment, with a focus on conservation and adjacent issues globally, some cross-sectoral issues, the connections between conservation and security, conservation and health, and some of the operational components too of delivering international conservation overseas. And it's an opportunity to articulate the trade-offs that really need to be considered to inform the decision points. The product really needs to have a standing for those who will be rebuilding and grounded in a united conservation community. So that's where the coalition comes in. And Ash mentioned the principles that govern this playbook, and you can read more about those principles on our website. So next slide, Ash. So the core functions of the playbook cover coordination and oversight, the funding and technical assistance that has been and can be, revisioning the provision of that, research and thought leadership, formal roles and action in treaties and coalitions like the CBD and the CITES, and the political influence needed to promote U.S. values. Next slide, Ash. So the other work, to both build an opportunity for the coalition to engage, and to inform the playbook. We're developing short, skimmable, evidence-led documents that'll serve as key design choices, holding webinars, and most recently, some of the coalition building activities by convening other experts on coalition building and websites like webinars like this to disseminate our purpose. And the events, like Ash mentioned, Climate Week in New York and the upcoming Climate Week in DC will be participating also, which is April 20th to the 26th. And then, of course, networking, lots of conversations with people that have been part of international conservation through USAID's work and other US agencies, political folks who are interested. It's very bipartisan support, as Ash mentioned earlier, and conservation practitioners, academics, the whole spectrum.
Great. Okay, so we've had plenty of time to talk at you and share a little bit about us. I'm going to just give you a couple kind of framing points before we go into our breakout groups, but it would be really great to get as much participation from you as possible. I'll show you in a minute what we're going to discuss, but I'm just going to give you an overview of what our discussions have looked like in the past at some of these other events that we mentioned. So as Robin was saying, there's really a spectrum of understanding. There's no right or wrong answer oftentimes with this, and it's very context specific. So I just want to give you I guess a look into some of the discussions we've had so that it can frame your breakout group discussions and what might be useful to talk about. So one of our big discussion points that has come up in the past, one of many, is should funding be more centralized or more localized? And so you can see some of the thoughts along the spectrum of less money to more smaller organizations, more money to fewer larger organizations, and then this intermediary option in the middle. And we gave participants in a previous scenario the option to vote where they fell along the spectrum. And you can kind of see that there's a wide range. I mean, people don't fall really on one side or the other here. There are definitely some outliers, but it is a wide range of what people think needs to happen. And then we allowed folks to kind of go in a breakout group and talk about, what kind of US role would be the most effective under this scenario, and what lessons do we want to take forward into the playbook in the future. And we don't have time to get into this level of discussion on a short webinar here, but what we do have time to talk about, and I'm going to bring that up here. Yep. So in both breakout groups, we're going to answer the same question, but depending on the group discussion, you might go in a very different direction. But we're hoping to just talk about how can US government funded conservation efforts be improved? And we're talking about from your perspective. So any experience that you have with this is valuable. We want to know what you've seen that you think works, either from personal experience or from what you've viewed in the field. And then what didn't work. And what we're really excited about thinking about is what can we reimagine? So what can we actually improve moving forward? And these will just be inputs, and hopefully this will give you a taste of what these discussions could look like. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second here.